everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Rap podcast. I am the co-host Jay Echo. What's good?
Yeah, what's up, y'all? It's Philosophical.
And today we are here to discuss something that I think affects a lot of relationships in that it affects how people enter relationships, how they leave relationships, and how they perform in relationships. And that is patterns of behavior, trends, whatever you want to call it, family curses, however you want to refer to it. In essence, people keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And it's not necessarily intentional. It's something that is inherent. As human beings, we respond to patterns. We look for something consistent, something homogenous, and we stick with that, especially if the result is relatively positive, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about, how do you break those patterns? Like you enter a relationship and the relationship doesn't work out. Whatever working out looks like to you, whether it doesn't result in marriage, it doesn't result in a healthy partnership, it doesn't result in whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But how do you take a step back and examine the things you are doing to contribute to that? Because that's ultimately the only way you can change that behavior, is to step back and examine, what am I doing? Is it correct? Is it healthy? And if it isn't, how can I change it?
Yeah.
And so what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, let's get a little deep as far as these thoughts. So let's kind of describe patterns. Patterns can sometimes be doing the same thing, being in a loop, being in a cycle. So let's kind of talk about how, first of all, the definition of a pattern. You know what I mean? People can kind of correlate this, and I could also correlate with this as far as patterns, as far as insanity. What are some of the things that you're doing as key? Is maybe just think about it outside of a relationship to when you're entering a relationship, and even kind of that growth process when you're in a relationship, right? A lot of times we enter into relationships with a certain quote unquote pattern, that the preference, that person needs to look a certain way, that person has to dress a certain way, that person has to act a certain way, right? Those are some of the patterns as far as what we're used to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that those patterns aren't bad, but a lot of times, when you are dealing with certain situations and the result hasn't been in your favor, why keep going through the same patterns? Why keep initiating and searching for the same things, right? It goes back to understanding, what you need. Obviously, if
Self-awareness,
being self-aware of the fact that, okay, you know, that situation didn't work for you before. So you're comfortable. Why jump into the same situation again? Or even if you jumping into the same situation again and you feel like you want to do something a little different, maybe you've done some self-reflection and it still didn't work, right? So it's all about, I think it comes down to certain people, we as men, I know a lot of our ladies out there tend to do the same things because we're comfortable, we're used to it. And a lot of times when you step out of that comfort zone, out of that pattern, it results in a certain type of change, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll give an example. You know, as I want to start with preference, because a lot of there's this philosophy that, attraction starts with a certain preference, right? She's got to be light skinned, or she's got to be dark skinned, or she's got to be this shape, she's got to be that shape, right? That's more of a pattern of preference of what you've been looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't even gotten to the part of personality, actions, decisions. You're just focusing on preference as far as what that person looks like, right? So, that's one scenario of patterns, right? Let's get to, kind of another example of location. Where, because a pattern of where are you meeting these people? You know what I'm saying? Are you meeting them in the club? Are you meeting them through mutual friends? Are you meeting them online? Are you meeting them anywhere? And this goes back to the preparation phase, as far as like, you've got to prepare yourself, as far as like, you can go out right now, taking the trash out, getting your mail, go to the grocery store, bookstore, anywhere, to meet someone. That could be totally outside of your quote unquote preference and location of pattern, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my thoughts on it is that I think we as people, we as human beings, we go through certain patterns of preference, certain patterns of location, because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
easy. You know what I'm saying?
You fear what you
And
don't know, and if you know it, it's
it's a fear of
safer,
change.
quote
Yeah, it's a
unquote.
fear of
Yeah.
change. It's a fear of the unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll even say that the results of a certain pattern being easy, right? It's easy. It's
Mm-hmm.
easy because you already know the steps, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, and I know it's maybe a bad example. It's like you're leaving your house every day. You know which way to go to after the first week or two. You've been there
Yeah.
6 months. You know how to get there by now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in certain situations, you already know how to react to a certain reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that reaction is bad, not saying that the reaction is um, good or not, but at the same time, it's the end result. What is
Mm-hmm.
the end result? And sometimes in certain situations, certain patterns have worked for certain people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've gotten the results you're looking for. But at the same time, it's like, were you even looking for that result? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Were you prepared for that result? Is this the result you wanted? Because sometimes we get in certain situations, we expect a certain result, and you don't get that result, and you're comfortable in the situation you're in, so you're not looking to make any changes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I
Mm-hmm.
think within certain patterns is like it just comes down to results. It comes down to what you need, what you want. Just what is the end goal? What is the end result? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because a lot of those patterns can stop a lot of the expectations you're looking for out of a relationship, out of dating, out of
Oh
life.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah. I
associate
mean,
patterns with general life.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, because we literally, from the time we are young, we are taught, this is what you are supposed to do, this is how you are
Yeah.
supposed to do it.
Yeah.
We don't ever really question if that teaching is correct or accurate or
Mhm.
works for us, because most of the time, our reference points are the people around us, and what's it called, when we the people around us, we may not realize it or we may not recognize it, but we tend to surround ourselves, especially these days, we tend to surround ourselves with people who are like-minded, people who share your habits, your patterns, all of that sort of stuff. And it's only when you are forced to venture out, things like, oh, I went to college and I met this person who I never would have met, or I went to work and the people in my office think completely different from me, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
That's when you start encountering all these different perspectives, all these different rituals, all these different routines, all these different patterns. But it's this is what it's a combination of instinct, it's a combination of biology, it's a combination of psychology, it's all of these things come together to create the you in this current moment that is comfortable with certain things, whether it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I don't go out that much. Why? Because I mean, I've found ways to entertain myself that don't involve me being drunk or being in a location full of other people or whatever the case may be. Like, that's just, I don't need to be around other people to have fun. Now, that's routine for me. I'm often chilling at home, not doing too much, not interacting with too many people. That is routine for me. But that routine also doesn't lend itself to me meeting somebody who could potentially be a relationship or could potentially be that person that I end up with, but that's my routine. And we've
So that
had
routine,
conversations.
so I think, okay, so let's speak for that, because I think a lot of people need to hear that are
Mhm.
in that routine, right?
Yeah.
So you being in that routine, we'll call it a pattern, right?
Yeah.
We'll call it a pattern.
Hmm.
So when you look at certain results that you're looking for out of life, right? It causes
Hmm.
you to, let's say, make a right or a left outside of that routine, right? Meaning,
Yeah.
for example, get up, go to work, come home, and you're in your routine, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
doesn't cause you to be like, okay, maybe after work I'll stop by, let's say, for example, a main restaurant you stop at for dinner all once in a while to go something to eat. Like, every Wednesday you're stopping there. Like, maybe this Wednesday I'll stop somewhere else, right?
Hmm.
It's that fear of like feeling like I've never been here before. I've never eaten
Hmm.
here before. I've never done this
Yeah.
before. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So I think certain people in general, men and women, especially men, we are stuck in a certain routine, a certain
Yeah.
pattern to where, you know, it's always the unknown. It's the fear factor, afraid to step out as far as doing something different, right?
Yeah.
It's an experience. It's to
Hmm.
feel like, how can I experience something that I'm not used to, right?
Yeah.
And some people don't want to do that. It's a risk.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
risk,
It's
right?
risk.
You know,
Yeah. It's risk.
it's a risk. It's the risk reward type of thing. And it's
Yeah.
so unknown and a fear factor. People are afraid to take risks, right?
Yeah. We are.
Yeah.
And I think I'm gonna pivot slightly, but I'm gonna bring it back. So
Okay.
let me so I was having a conversation with two folks this week at the office, actually.
Hmm.
And we were talking about most people limit themselves without realizing it, right?
Mm.
Whether it's because of how they were brought up, whether it's because of morality, whether it's
So let me
because
add to
of
that. When you say they limit themselves, I want to just add to that and I'll let you continue. I think based off of the way they were brought up, as you said,
mhm,
and what was the second point? I'm sorry.
morality, like
Morality,
religion, all that
yeah.
sort of.
And let's add in there also what people say out of their mouths.
Exactly. Yep.
How people talk to each other, how they view
Yeah.
themselves, how they view
Language.
other people, language,
Language.
because what you put out in the air can sometimes be a reflection of what you're getting back, right?
Hmm.
If you're saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this,
Then you
you're gonna
won't.
start to believe it.
Yeah.
That's
And
the, that's
and
that's the mentality, we've got to change. But go ahead.
yeah. And but that's actually exactly where I was getting to. It's
Yeah.
it's we limit ourselves, but the second you like we're talking about breaking out of those patterns. And I think the first thing you have to do is change your mentality in terms of how you talk to yourself.
Good point.
So
Good point.
so for instance, I've recently started doing this thing, and this is probably going to rub you the wrong way because we discussed it when because we've had conversations about Kanye West and things like that. And don't worry,
Hmm.
I'm gonna tie this in. But something that I've been doing for myself is like, yo, I create my own reality, right?
Hmm.
I am capable of creating my own reality.